through working for ATP Media, I gained contacts at WTA, and I did some work on the WTA, and I did some work on a couple of Grand Slams. So yeah, what started as kind of very much sitting in a edit suite and graduated to going on shoots and then interviewing players and stuff. It's a very varied job depending on who you're working for.
And did you have any kind of qualifications and stuff when you walked into kind of the tower and stuff like that? Did you go to university, for instance? Did you?
Yes, I did go to university.
I mean, I already know this because we have mutual acquaintances who you went to university with. So, but obviously, just for the audience basis.
I studied the same thing as a very good friend of yours, which was television, media studies and television production at the University of Huddersfield. And as great as those 3 years were, and as much as I enjoyed the course and the university, personally, I can't speak for other people who've done television production courses, but it didn't really give me much in the way of contacts or in the way of how to break into the industry. So although you kind of learnt some important skills, and I wish I'd learnt more, I had continuous access to kind of edit suites and cameras and stuff, which I never really used because I had it in my head I wanted to be a producer or a director. And at that time, producers or directors don't do much of the technical stuff. Now you cannot get by as a producer without being able to do some editing or some camera work, or you have to be able to do a lot of these things. So yes, I did. It made absolutely zero difference to me getting any work. It's the honest truth. I think a lot of people in television will say that. So obviously, as everyone always says, a very difficult industry to get into. Though there were some things that still kind of lived with me from university experience, but it's very much starting fresh.
Basically, a few hangovers and a few social things, probably more than anything else. Shout out to all the students out there who are currently on their television production degree or anything like that. It means
that sounds terrible. Please carry on studying and studying hard, and use the facilities much better to your advantage than I ever did. That's for sure.
Right, so let's talk about some of the juicy stuff then. You've told us that you've working on these programs. You've interviewed Nicholas Almagro's. You did your first piece about Nicholas Almagro.
Yeah, I have interviewed him, but not until much later. My first interview was with another Spaniard, Guillermo Garcia Lopez, at Eastbourne, and that was my first shoot for ATP Uncovered.
So who have you spoken to then? You've spoken to everyone, right?
Yeah, everyone past and present. I would say there's a few on the kind of a few of the youngsters on the ATP side. I mean, actually, no, not on the WTA side that I haven't interviewed yet because I haven't worked on tennis for a while.
So I'm going to run down a few names here, and you tell me approximately how many times that you've interviewed this person. Right?
Okay.
Novak Djokovic.
I'd say he is the player I've interviewed more than anyone else. I would say that's probably about 200 times, but who knows?
Incredible scenes. Serena?
Not as many, because she doesn't do as many WTA tournaments and certainly doesn't at the moment. But I would say Serena probably about 20, 30 times.
Federer?
Lots. Not as much as Djokovic, because he obviously kind of plays fewer tournaments. I would say 100, 150.
Oh my word! Right. What about my kind of not my hero? Well, maybe my hero, Andy Murray.
Yeah, lots. I mean, obviously, not as much as I'd like to recently. Andy Murray probably about 100. 120, 150 times, similar to Federer, but the time, and it's probably one of my best experiences doing an interview was with him after he won the O2, and he just sealed year-end world number one, and it was just the end of that amazing run.
What year that was?
And well, just that tournament, breaking the record, I think, for ATP, the duration of 3-set ATP matches in 2 consecutive matches against Raonic and Nishikori, and just coming back from the break, and then the final against Djokovic was a relative walk in the park in comparison. But he just, that season was incredible, and that was one of the best interviews I've done, and just, everyone was, usually we've kind of, it's a bit of a step back in the TV compound, and everything's kind of seen from a distance. You don't get as emotionally invested, especially when you've been doing it for such a long time. But literally everyone, even people I work with who wouldn't claim to be that bothered about tennis, was excited. That was a noisy TV compound when that happened.
So you said, obviously, start with Guillermo Garcia Lopez. You said that you've spoken to all these people loads of times. Like, is this kind of in the pre-tournament stage, in the media day, or is it, during the tournament? Have you done on-court interviews? Like, where are what have you been kind of speaking to these people about, and has it been absolutely terrifying?
All of the above. Yeah. Lots of post-match, lots of on-court, and that kind of has come about more in the last kind of few years. Yes, media day. So there's a media day 1 or 2 days before the main draw of the tournament starts, where the top seeds of that tournament get paraded for the media. And then, because I'm usually working for the host broadcaster or literally for the ATP or for the WTA, you kind of have the responsibility of asking questions for a lot of other broadcasters. So a lot of the time it has to be quite generic stuff. But then if you're doing stuff for your own purposes, so might do the odd feature on a player profile or something like that, so you can get a bit more creative. And then certainly more in recent years, as digital exposure and social media outputs have become much more important, you do a lot more things like kind of quizzes and games and stuff with them as well, so you can have a bit more fun with them doing that. And then and some off-court stuff with some, again, with more kind of on the ATP uncovered side for that. When you kind of get them away from a tournament situation, then, and you have a bit more time with them, then they can be a bit more laid back. You might get to know them a bit better and get some more interesting stuff with them. But yes, certainly all of those things you mentioned, and at times it's nerve-wracking. Sometimes everything happens so quickly that those media days can be such a whirlwind that you don't really have time for it to be nerve-wracking, or the exact opposite. So you can have they can all come at once, or a big group of them can come at once, and you're just literally doing one after the other, and you don't have time to catch breath. Or you can be waiting for ages and ages and ages, and I think actually the latter is probably worse, because you get too relaxed, and that's when you forget things. If you've been waiting for 45 minutes or an hour or something, and then somebody turns up and you've forgotten what you're going to say, it's
absolutely. And you mentioned you kind of get to know them a little bit. Is there any kind of favourites that I don't want you to pick people out necessarily, but anyone who's been particularly responsive or is really good with the media that kind of maybe surprise some people? I don't know.
I think kind of everyone, although they've kind of seen it more now from his social media, but I think people a few years ago it was so kind of down, the public at large were a bit down on Andy Murray, saying unfairly that he's boring or he's miserable, and he's literally the exact opposite of that. He always, he's someone that if I'm writing questions, I'll always, if you like, think a little bit harder for his, because I know that he's always going to give a really considered and interesting answer. There's some guys that are always really, really nice to me, and the guys always say hello to you outside of the tournament. So if you see them at the hotel or a restaurant or something, that's what you always remember. So like people like Grigor Dimitrov, always really nice to me, remembers my name, which is great. Marin Cilic, also, yeah, very nice guy. Who else? And then on the women's side, I've always people always been really nice to me. People like Petra Kvitova, who I know a lot of colleagues of mine will say the same thing. Is just one of the nicest people you could ever hope to meet. Angie Kerber's always been really lovely to me as well. There aren't really any, there's no real horror stories really.
Go on then, tell us about something like a mortifying experience or something that you kind of regretted.
The worst thing, and I think I slept after it was the very last interview of a day, and these can be long days on the tennis. If centre court's got 7 matches, 5-day matches and 2-night matches, and you're there from 10 a.m. You can be there from 10 a.m. until 1, 2, sometimes even like 2:30 in the morning. And it was the last interview of the day. It was on court with Anna Ivanovic in Cincinnati. Most people had left the centre court, and I was waiting for her to come over. Did the first question. She was answering the first question, and for some reason, probably because I was really, really tired, I'd just completely forgotten what the second question was, and just didn't say anything, and just stood there like an absolute idiot. And then she's kind of like gesturing to the WTA player liaison guy next to me, like, what's this guy's problem? And I had to basically kind of pretend that I can't remember what I did. Pretend I had some kind of like shooting pain in my leg or something. So, sorry, let's start again. Luckily, it wasn't live. And started again, but it was just like the contempt in her face for me. Is like, who is this guy? What is he doing? And I was standing there for about, when kind of like 5 or 10 seconds can just seem like a lifetime. And I don't know what had happened. Like my mind had just gone, probably just like thinking about getting home and going to bed, and I'd just gone and just had nothing to say. And it was
it's your worst nightmare, isn't it? Sure, that's your worst nightmare as in kind of an interview, and it must feel like it's just gone on forever and ever and ever. Oh, mate, that's
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty bad. I mean, on a media day in Dubai once, we were doing that on the top of a roof, and just before the first interview started, I had a bird crap on me on my shirt. So the heroic cameraman I was working with, Brucey, managed to get rid of it, but obviously left a massive stain, and so got asked a lot about that. And it seems to be the open air preview interviews where the worst stuff happens. I got really badly sunburned once as well in Indian Wells, and waiting for the last one of the day was Federer, and the first thing he said to me was, "Oh, you look like a lobster." I was like, that's nice, thank you.
Federer, you can't say anything either.
Yeah, but he said it with a cheeky grin, and I'm not going to get annoyed at Federer.
No, of course not. Has there been anything particularly funny then? Obviously, that's quite funny to us, you getting sunburned and getting crapped on by a bird, but anything genuinely laugh out you remember as being a particular time?
I think, was it my first interview with her? I think it was my second interview with Serena Williams. And again, it was Cincinnati. It was a preview interview. This one was in a studio. And she, as you can imagine, has quite a lot of entourage come in with her. And so that's always that always makes for quite a tense situation, because when you've got a huge audience of people, like some of these studios are really small, so like if a player brings in lots of people with them, then it can get really cramped and hot, and you can kind of hear all this entourage breathing on you. But I was doing a sound check create a last minute sound check with the because I think she was the first one of the day with the cameraman. I said to the cameraman, "Oh, how am I sounding?" And she said, "This is," as she sat in front of me. We're about to do the first question.